The first passage was on the quantum loop theory. Now, the moment we read a passage which is pure science background, physics, quantum loop theory, quantum theory, most of us get daunted by it. Even those with an engineering and a pure science background get a little daunted by it because there's so much technical language and technical terms. But remember, passages based on science and technology turn out to be very objectively written with a very clear structure, and the questions tend to be moderate to easy. So there's nothing to worry about these passages when you come across them. So my advice to you is, when you come across a pure science passage, read the passage quickly, thoroughly, summarize it, and then answer the questions. If there are direct questions, fact-based questions, refer back to the relevant part of the passage, cross-check your answers, and mark your answers. All right. Okay, let's now summarize the passage. One of the most prominent mathematical approaches to quantum gravity is loop. Okay, let me get the pen color right. Hold on one second. Yeah. So he says the quantum gravity or loop quantum gravity, which proposes that, so what is loop quantum gravity theory? The fabric of space and time is made of extremely small discrete chunks or loops. Space and time is made up of small discrete independent chunks called loops. A remarkable aspect of the quantum loop gravity is that it appears to eliminate time entirely. Space and time, but this quantum loop gravity appears, it seems as if it's totally not taking time into account. All right, interesting. A number of other approaches also seem to remove time as a fundamental aspect of reality. So you're talking of space and time. There is this quantum loop gravity theory which seems to ignore time altogether. There are other approaches also which don't give any importance to time as a fundamental aspect of reality. Done. Second paragraph. So we know we need a new physical theory to explain the universe, because so far the approach was space and time. Now suddenly we need a new approach to explain the universe. This theory might not feature time. Yes, these new approaches are not featuring time. So the new theory which explains the universe might not feature time. Might not. Suppose such a theory turns out to be correct. Now we've gone into the subjunctive mood. We've gone into the hypothetical mood. He says, suppose you have such a theory and such a theory turns out to be true. Would it follow that time doesn't exist? Does it mean that time doesn't exist? Because the theory is not using time, not giving any importance to time. Does it mean that time doesn't exist? It's complicated. So what's his answer to, does it mean that time doesn't exist? It's like one of your Facebook statuses on relationships. It's complicated. What does he mean by that? It depends on what you mean by exist. What do you mean by the term exist? Then I'll give you the answer whether time exists or not. This is what the author is saying. Interesting approach to a pure physics, pure science passage. Theories of physics don't include any tables, chairs, or people. Yet we still accept that tables, chairs, and people exist. Now, what does he say in the second paragraph? We now need a new physical theory because it's not using time. So now here we need a new physical theory which will explain the universe, which might not feature time. Suppose such a theory turns out to be true. This is what the author is saying. Whole thing is hypothetical. He says, suppose you have a theory explaining the existence of the universe without taking time into account. Does that mean that time doesn't exist? So I give you a theory where he's not using time at all and he's explaining the universe. Author is asking you, does it mean that the concept of time doesn't exist? Then the author's argument. Now the whole argument is running on logic. He's saying it's complicated. The answer to this is complicated. It depends on what you mean by exist. Theories of physics don't include tables, chairs, or people. Yet we accept that tables, chairs, and people exist. So do you have any theory of physics which proves the existence of tables, chairs, or people? No. Does that mean tables, chairs, and people don't exist? They do, right? Then what is the author's answer? Why? because we assume that such thing exists at a higher level than the level described by physics. Physics describes one level of existence. Tables, chairs, people exist at a higher level, whatever he means by it. We are not into what he means by it. We just read and understand. We say that tables, for example, emerge from an underlying physics of particles whizzing around the universe. All right, physics will explain those particles, but tables emerge from that underlying aspect of particles in the universe, and physics probably explains those underlying particles. Clear? All right, next. But while we have a pretty good sense of how a table might be made out of fundamental particles, we have no idea how time might be made out of something more fundamental. Okay, I can understand how tables are made, so we understand the existence of table, we take it for granted. But somewhere, understanding time in terms of being made out of more fundamental particles becomes a little difficult to understand. So unless we come up with a good account of how time emerges, we can explain how tables emerge. Unless we can explain how time emerges, it is not clear that we can simply assume that time exists. So we need to have some explanation about how time emerges. Until that, we can't just assume that time exists. Time might not exist at any level. The author says, given this argument, time might not exist at any level. Second, this paragraph is clear? All right. Next. Saying that time might not exist at any level is like saying that there are no tables at all. What do you mean? Time doesn't exist. I mean, we all take time so much. Time is such an integral part of our lives. The author explains that. Trying to get by in a world without tables might be tough, but managing in a world without time seems positively disastrous. Can you imagine life without time? You can probably imagine life without tables, but you can't imagine life without time. So he says our entire lives are built around time. We plan for the future in light of what we know about the past. We hold people morally accountable for their past actions with an eye to reprimanding them later on. We believe ourselves to be agents in part because we can act in a way that will bring about change in the future. So our whole life depends on the concept of time. Past, present, and what we do now as agents of the present for a foreseeable future. So he is saying we believe ourselves agents in part because we can plan and act in a way that we can make changes in the future. So life without time will be positively disastrous because it's such an integral part of our lives. The discovery that time does not exist would seem to bring the entire world to a grinding halt, right? Because your whole life is revolving around this concept, and suddenly you say that there is no time, then the whole world will come to a standstill. We would have no reason to get out of bed. Next. So this is the hypothetical paragraph where he says, suppose there was no time, what would happen? Life without tables, you can imagine. Life without time, life will come to a grinding halt. You won't even get up from bed. Pointless. Then there is a way out of the mess. So he is saying, look, no. What's the way out? There is a solution to this problem. What is that? Physics might eliminate time. It seems to leave causation intact. Time physics is not giving importance to. That might happen, but it leaves this phenomenon called causation intact. What does he mean by that? The sense causation is the sense in which one thing can bring about another. That's causation. One thing causing another, bringing about another. That aspect is left alone by physics. That aspect exists. Physics is not ignoring it, not saying that it doesn't happen. Perhaps what physics is telling us is that causation and not time is the basic feature of our universe. So now you're getting to the author's main point. Starts by talking about time and space, Then he says this quantum loop gravity theory doesn't take time into account. Lot of new approaches don't take time into account. Does that mean time doesn't exist? Then he poses a hypothetical question. He asks you, we don't talk about tables in physics. We don't talk about people in physics. Does that mean people and tables don't exist? No. Why? Because we know that tables and people made of particles whizzing around the universe, he says. He says, then what about time? Right? Then he comes to the question. So we have to explain time somehow in terms of the particles that cause time to emerge. Otherwise, we wouldn't be understanding the concept of time. Then we would assume that time doesn't exist. And if time doesn't exist, our life will be pointless. Then he says, no. The solution to this is physics does not factor in time, but physics gives a lot of importance to a phenomenon called causation. Causation, the ability of something to bring about something, to cause something else to happen. He says, so basically physics is telling us causation and not time is the basic feature of our universe. So earlier physics used to think of time and space as the basic features of our universe. New theories seem to be telling us that it is causation, not time, that is the basic feature of the universe. If that's right, then the agency can still survive. For it's possible to reconstruct a sense of agency entirely in causal terms. Agency, our action of doing something, that can be justified in terms of causation. This suggests that time does not exist, may have no direct impact on our lives, even while it propels physics into a new era. So if you take this, if you accept this, then it can suggest that time doesn't play an important role. It doesn't have a direct impact on our lives, even though it propels physics into a new era. Even while it propels physics into a new era. Clear? Always remember, summarizing a passage is simplifying it so that you understand. You may get one sentence or one aspect of the author's thought or a point. You may get it wrong, but with practice in summarizing, even that doesn't happen. All right. Question 1. None of the following statements can be inferred from the passage except that. So what's the question asking? None can be inferred except, that means only one can be inferred. Which option can be inferred from the passage? None can be inferred except means which one can be inferred. Remember, understand the question. We've understood it. What are the options? Quantum. So this normal inference questions in CAT are based on the main point. And when we summarized, we know what's the main point. If you have any doubts, you can go back, but it would be a kind of waste of time if you did. If you understand the main point, you don't have to go back to the passage and refer to the relevant lines. But if you're not sure of something, if you're not sure of an option, you can always go back and refer to the relevant lines in the passage. You know how the passage, the flow of ideas in the passage are. All right. Loop quantum gravity theory is the first theory that eliminates time entirely. Did the passage say that? Did the author say that? What did the author say? Loop quantum theory seems to eliminate time altogether. There are many new approaches which do the same. So has he mentioned it is the first theory which does it? It doesn't. Therefore, this can't be inferred. All right. The theories that reject time as a basic feature of our universe substitute it with causation as a basic feature. Where does he say this? In the last passage. While time may not be factored in, causation is factored in. So these theories seem to suggest that causation is the basic feature of the universe, not time. So second one can be inferred. That's our answer. Always, when the first or second option is correct, look quickly at the third and fourth just to be sure you're on the right track and eliminate them. Science does not accept that time may have no direct impact on our lives, but science is, right? Science physicists are coming up with new approaches about time not being the major. They're not even featuring in time. So this cannot be inferred. Physics as established theory which gives clarity on how time emerges. He says until physics gives us clarity on how time emerges, we'll still not be sure of the existence of time. So physics has not given us clarity about the existence of time. So D cannot be inferred, right? Therefore, the correct answer is B. B can be inferred.